As an executive, I see no value in you. Does that make sense?
I'm sorry, what?
Most of us have survived a terrible manager, the passive aggression, the pointless authority, the meetings that should have been emails. Now imagine surviving a plane crash and getting stranded on a deserted island with that same person. You cannot go home. The plane already crashed, the island has no signal, and this manager species is now making decisions about your survival.
Although I'm betting I am a much nicer boss than you ever would have been.
Send Help takes that premise and does something genuinely unsettling with it. This movie actually asks you to endure exactly that nightmare and then makes it worse. It turns corporate irritation into psychological warfare. You are probably thinking this is just another survival thriller. It is not. I call this the power vacuum spiral. Once authority loses structure, control mutates. And here is the twist. The real danger is not hunger, not the ocean, not the crash. It is a hierarchy without rules. In this video, we are breaking down how Send Help turns a stranded on an island story into a slow-burn psychological power game, and why the scariest monster in the film never once had to raise its voice. The film opens with something painfully ordinary. A corporate flight, polite smiles, passive-aggressive tension simmering beneath small talk. You already sense the imbalance. She works under him. He controls her performance reviews, her promotions, her future. You're probably thinking this is just workplace drama before the real story begins. But here's the first twist. The crash is not the beginning of the power struggle. It is the removal of witnesses. When the plane goes down and they wake up on a deserted island, the movie does not rush into chaos. No immediate screaming, no dramatic running on the beach. Instead, there is silence. The kind of silence that makes hierarchy feel louder. He still gives instructions. She still waits for approval before speaking. I call this the authority residue. Even when the office disappears, the power dynamic survives. At first, survival seems simple. Build shelter, find water, ration food. He naturally assumes leadership. He frames it as experience, as logic, as structure. And you might agree with him. Leadership is necessary in crisis, right? But here's where the psychological tension tightens. Every decision becomes a performance review. Every mistake becomes evidence. He starts correcting her tone, questioning her instincts, rewriting events in real time. Most people stop here and label him controlling. But the film goes deeper. The reason this dynamic works is because she participates in it. Not out of weakness, but conditioning. Years of corporate survival have trained her to second-guess herself. Once you see that, the island stops being a physical trap and becomes a mental one. Then the survival tasks escalate. A failed fishing attempt leads to blame. A minor injury becomes proof she cannot handle pressure. He begins rationing not just food, but validation. I call this the scarcity strategy. Once resources shrink, power consolidates. And here's the uncomfortable part. It works. You're probably thinking she should just walk away. But walk where? The island is small. The ocean is endless. The crash did not remove the hierarchy. It concentrated it. Every confrontation now carries the weight of survival. Disagreeing with him risks more than ego. It risks shelter, food, protection. And then comes the shift. A rescue flare misfires because he dismissed her suggestion about wind direction. For the first time, his authority produces visible failure. The illusion cracks. This is where the film flips the tension. Control without competence becomes dangerous. Most survival thrillers focus on nature as the antagonist. Here, nature is neutral. The real threat is psychological dominance in an environment with no HR department, no oversight, no consequences. The island becomes a laboratory for unchecked ego. As days pass, she starts withholding information. Small acts at first. A hidden water source, a separate stash of food. The power dynamic begins to rebalance. Not through confrontation, but strategy. I call this the silent rebellion effect. When open resistance is impossible, intelligence goes underground. Survival becomes a currency. Fire, water, shelter, navigation. Each skill becomes leverage. And the film quietly asks a brutal question. What happens when one person controls more leverage than the other? You're probably thinking this is just about competence. Whoever is more skilled should lead. That sounds logical. But here's the twist. Competence slowly morphs into control when fear enters the equation. I call this the fear contract. Once both people accept that survival depends on one dominant decision maker, they unknowingly sign an invisible agreement. One commands, one complies. The tension builds not through shouting, but through silence. He starts speaking less, observing more. He withholds plans. He delays explanations. Information becomes power. And once information is unevenly distributed, trust collapses. But here is where the film becomes smarter than it looks. She is not powerless. She is calculating. Every insult, every correction, Every subtle humiliation is stored, not reacted to. Most viewers expect a big emotional explosion. That is predictable. The film refuses to give it. Instead, it builds psychological chess. Then comes the food crisis. Supplies shrink faster than expected. He insists on strict control. 1 meal a day, no negotiation. You're probably thinking he is just being rational, but watch closely. The reason he tightens control is not efficiency. It is anxiety. Control becomes his coping mechanism. I call this the illusion of order. When chaos grows outside, insecure personalities double down on dominance inside. The island becomes less about survival and more about maintaining a fragile identity. If he is not the leader, who is he? And this is where the movie flips perspective. You start noticing her restraint differently. She asks fewer questions. She agrees more easily. She appears compliant. But most people stop here and assume she is breaking down. She is not. She is observing patterns. Every leader has blind spots. His is ego. He overestimates his instincts. He underestimates her adaptability. And once you see that imbalance, the tension becomes electric. Not loud. Electric. Then the storm hits. A brutal night of wind and rain destroys their shelter. For the first time, his plan fails catastrophically. His leadership cracks under pressure. And here's the rehook. Crisis does not expose weakness, it amplifies it. She steps in quietly, repairs faster, thinks faster, acts faster. No speeches, no confrontation, just competence. The power equation begins to tilt, and he feels it. You can see it in the way he questions her decisions more aggressively. When control slips, dominance often turns hostile, not because of malice, but because of fear. The island strips away titles. There is no manager anymore, only capability. And here's the chilling shift. The survival story becomes an identity war. Whoever proves more essential survives not just physically, but psychologically. By the final stretch, you realize something unsettling. The crash did not trap them together. Their need for control did. One clung to authority to feel safe. The other mastered patience to reclaim agency. And once the rescue finally appears on the horizon, the biggest question is not who survived the island. It is who survived themselves. And just when you think the film has shown you its core conflict, it quietly shifts again. The island stops being a battleground and becomes a mirror, not of power, of personality. At first, both characters believe they are reacting to circumstances. Plane crash, isolation, limited resources, survival mode. But here is what the film slowly reveals. The island does not change them. It removes the distractions that were hiding them. You're probably thinking extreme situations create extreme behavior. The reason that feels true is because pressure exposes patterns that were always there. I call this the amplification principle. Stress does not invent character. It magnifies it. Notice how he constantly reframes events. When a plan fails, he adjusts the narrative. It was the weather. It was bad luck. It was her distraction. This is not random defensiveness. It is psychological self-preservation. Once his identity as the competent leader cracks, everything cracks. And here is where the tension becomes almost uncomfortable. She begins to stop correcting him, not because she agrees, because she understands something. When someone is desperate to control the story, challenging the story strengthens their grip. Silence weakens it. Most viewers expect a dramatic confrontation scene, a screaming match, a physical fight. But the film refuses that payoff. Instead, it builds what I call the erosion effect. Power does not collapse in explosions. It dissolves in moments. A look held too long, a suggestion delivered calmly, a task completed without instruction. These tiny fractures stack up, and once they stack up, the hierarchy begins to feel artificial. You can sense him noticing it. He starts watching her more closely, asking where she goes, questioning her timing. Control turns into suspicion. Suspicion turns into paranoia. And here's the shift you do not see coming. The island is no longer the threat. Uncertainty is. When you remove external validation, a fragile ego has nothing to anchor to. No colleagues, no titles, no office, just two people and the truth of their competence. That truth is terrifying. You're probably wondering why she does not just declare independence. Because overt rebellion would confirm his fears. Instead, she chooses unpredictability. She changes routines. She solves problems without announcing it. She removes his ability to anticipate her. And once anticipation disappears, dominance weakens. There is a quiet scene where they sit by the fire, barely speaking. On the surface, nothing happens. But psychologically, everything shifts. He asks a simple question about rescue. She answers without looking at him. For the first time, his approval is irrelevant. That is the invisible turning point. From there, the film becomes about internal liberation. Not escape from the island, escape from imposed identity. She stops behaving like a subordinate. He struggles to behave like anything else. And the most unsettling part is this. There is no villain speech, no confession, no redemption arc. The transformation happens subtly, almost invisibly. By the time rescue becomes possible, the emotional distance between them is wider than the ocean around them. The crash stranded two bodies on an island, but the real story was about who would free their mind first. So when you strip away the plane crash, the hunger, the storms, what Send Help really leaves you with is this uncomfortable realization. Survival was never the central conflict. Control was. And once you see that, the island stops looking remote. It starts looking familiar, because you have seen this dynamic before. In offices, in relationships, in friendships, authority that survives even when the structure collapses. Compliance that looks like weakness, but is actually strategy. The film forces you to ask one question you cannot escape. In a crisis with no witnesses, who are you really? And here is where I want you to think deeper. Did he become controlling because of the island? Or did the island finally remove the mask? And was she surviving him or studying him? If this breakdown made you see the film differently, drop your take in the comments. I want to know who you think truly had power by the end. Like this video if you enjoy psychological thrillers dissected this way, and subscribe for more deep dives where we do not just review movies, we interrogate them.